Hi, good evening again. Rachel, Earth Angel, Rachel, whichever way you want to say it. Anyway, I know I left you hanging on the last recording. Don't know what happened. My phone started doing something weird, tripping out. So I just called it good. But I think I left off with something about my mom hiring Johnny Minchinella to come into my life after my husband and I split up, and I had thrown him out of our house. Let me go back to the beginning a little. I grew up on 23 acres in Forestdale, California. There were two houses, my parents' house, which I grew up in, and then the mother-in-law's house that was just down the hill from that one, and you had to drive past it to get to my mom's house. But anyway, uh, when I was living with when I left my parents' house when I was 16 because I was being sexually molested by my brother continuously, and he had some idea in his head that I wanted that to happen. And I think now in retrospect that it was because of the magic or the voodoo that my mom was doing on him, because she wanted him to molest me. She wanted me to be ruined. And she was a very sick individual. And I just didn't know it at the time. I really didn't. I knew she had problems because, she started doing drugs with me when I was 11, and she did them with me until I quit. Uh, but I mean, I knew she was sick. I knew she had issues, but I didn't know how many and how severe. I didn't know that she stole me from my mom, her daughter, because Sally's actually my grandma. She stole me from the hospital. She killed her baby girl, first of all, went and stole me from my mom in the hospital and had the doctors tell her that I had died, and broke my mom's heart. My mom thought her baby had died. Everything happens for a reason. And obviously, all of these things had to happen so that I would go through what I went through, so that I would be who I am today, so that I could do what God has put me here to do, what I came here to do. I decided on my own to come here to do this, uh, beforehand. So, I knew what it would entail. And so, at any rate, when I was 16, I left. I met a boyfriend, Kelly, in high school. I fell in love. We were head over heels. We were high school sweethearts. You know, we, everybody was just like, jealous of our relationship. We were all over the yearbooks and, the cutest couple and this and that. And it was great. And I had gotten off drugs, and I was clean. Him and I quit. We were clean for 4 years. We were together. Towards the end of that 4 years, I, you know, well, I had left at 16. We got together when I was 16, and just barely 16. And I went to live with him at his grandma's house because I just wanted out of my house. I didn't want to be there because I couldn't. It was, I was losing it. I was losing it. I was a zombie. I was walking around dead inside when I had met Kelly, and he brought me back to life, and I was happy and healthy. Well, my parents couldn't have me away from their control, and so she started doing voodoo on us, and before I knew it, we were using drugs again. And this weird demeanor came over Kelly when he would get high. And now I look back and I know it's because he was freaking possessed. He looked like he was possessed. But I had no idea about anything like that. And I thought it was just he had a chemical imbalance for the drugs. And he just got really loopy and he started accusing me of cheating on him and this, that, and the other. And I was so head over heels for him. So, and I wouldn't come back home. And so this is what my mom did to, and so he got all sideways on me one day and threw me down in the street and called me names and whatever. And I called mom and I left. And I left and I broke up with him and that was it. I was done because I couldn't deal with the way he was behaving as it was, but that was it. That was the final straw. Nobody had ever laid a finger on me or spoke to me like that ever. And it scared me the way he looked when he was like that. And so, yeah, I called my mom just like she wanted. And here comes Sally, just happy as could be to come to my rescue and pick me up. And on the way home with her, excuse me, sorry, on the way home with her at the light, going out of Auburn to Forest Hill, I saw my friend Jacob Vandegrift, who became my husband. Um, but I saw him and I was all upset and crying and whatnot. And he was like, "Hey," and he hollered at me from his truck because we were really good friends because we hung out a lot because I had dated his uncle, which is only like 2 years older than him. So it wasn't like that. But at any rate, I said, "Hey," and he's all, I said, "Come by and see me." And so I had come home. I forgot a part. Okay, because I wouldn't come home before that. My parents had told us we could come there and live in the trailer. There was a mobile home that they had bought for my brother Tim when he got his girlfriend pregnant. At any rate, it was empty and it was at the pasture, the top part of our property. And they said you guys can live in it. So we were living there, and that's when we started using again. And then I forget why we were back at his. We didn't want to be there. I didn't want to be there. I never wanted to be back at that damn property. But anyways, we wound up back at his grandma's in Auburn, and that's when that all happened. And so when I came home, I went back to the trailer by myself to live in the trailer, and Jake came to see me, and I was really beside myself. I was really kind of out of it. Oh, because I had gotten pregnant and I didn't know, and was right. It was right when it was after we broke up, as a matter of fact. We were having issues, and I told him I was pregnant. And he said I was lying and all this shit. He was just acting so weird. Him and his brother, they were just so weird. It was weird. And so, but my mom and him took me to go get an abortion. I was 5 months along. I was 19. Went and got an abortion. I'm sure I did. They were both standing there. I was awake for that procedure, so I know. And the tube was laying across me, so I'm sure that was legit. At any rate, so I wound up back at the trailer, whacked out. My dog that I had that I'd gotten Sadie with Kelly wound up getting in the antifreeze at my parents' house, and so I had to have my brother shoot her. And then, on top of the, abortion and then breaking up with my 4-year boyfriend, I was just out of it. I was like, ah. And so I was going through it at the trailer by myself and kind of, feeling, like just, yeah. But I was still using or whatever. But anyways, Jacob came to see me and he said that I could come and move in with him and come live with him. And I was like, awesome, you know. And I didn't realize why I wanted out of there so bad. And all I knew is like every time I got out of there, I wound up back over there somehow. And it killed me every time. And I didn't realize that they were doing that on purpose. But at any rate, I moved in with Jake in Todd Valley. It's a few miles down the road from where my parents' property was. And we were good. We were good. We were good. It was great because he was like my best friend. And we got married, and it was awesome. My parents weren't happy about it or nothing, and of course they didn't cut. We said screw you, and we went to Tahoe or to Reno or wherever. My bangs are jacked, but anyways, um, we were married, and his grandpa sold the house. It was his grandpa's house we were living in. And so his grandpa, who was living in like Australia at the time or somewhere, I don't know. But he sold the house. And it was this big house at any rate. And so we didn't have anywhere to go. And Jacob had just lost his job. And this was probably all due to voodoo, no doubt, because he got chased by the local cop, and he outran him. He was on his dirt bike because he had a pocket full of dope, and they knew where he lived. And of course, he went down his road and whatever. And Dennis Lee was cool about it, but he got in trouble for that. But he lost his job due to that. And I had wrecked his truck. I was going to pick him up at the paving yard in Sacramento, and I was all jacked up and, tweaked out. And I went to pass somebody on the hill by Monteverde, and I didn't have glasses at the time, and I really needed them. And the guy wouldn't let me pass, and he kept doing this shit. And pretty much we ran out of road, got over the hill. There was a truck coming, and I had a head-on collision. Well, I had a bruise from the seatbelt. I had a notion to put my seatbelt on about one quarter back. And so I'm standing there, and my dad goes by to go to work because he works at the railroad, right? He works at the railroad. And so it was like 3 o'clock. He was driving by. And I was like, oh my God, because he saw the truck. And I thought, oh, he'd be all freaked out and worried and what have you. And he was like pissed off. I was like, Dad, I'm okay. I have my seatbelt on. I'm okay, and he was like, grr, you know, great. And he went to work, and I'm like, okay, cool. So we didn't have a vehicle either. So Jake couldn't get to work. That's why he was riding his motorcycle, his Enduro, because I wrecked his truck. And then we went to buy another truck, and his grandma had helped us by coastlining. Well, her boyfriend had took her to the cleaners, and she didn't know she didn't have any money in her bank account. Okay, I'm gonna pause this because my daughter's texting me. Hold on.